Hey, it's Shaves, and welcome to another edition of AniTube Digest, where we go over the best and not so best anime YouTube videos to come out this week from the 31st of August to the 6th of September. First of some videos that I thought were decent. I enjoyed them, and the first one is from Narmak. He put out a Super Smash Bros. Anime opening, and it's pretty decently made. I wasn't bothered by a lot of, like, he didn't put a lot of, like, his sort of, like, very cynical, kind of, like, looking down on anime sort of humor that I think has been prevalent in his other shorts personally. And it does seem like he's being a little more economical with a lot of this. A lot of these are just still drawings, and I'm cool with that. I love limited animation, and it's like those particular images make a good impact. So I thought this was a fairly economical project for him to make too, while he's trying to make like regular content while working on this SpongeBob anime episode 2, where he's putting a lot of effort in, but takes a long time to make. So I appreciate something like this. I would say that, like, in watching this, it made me realize, it's like, wow, there's been a lot of these kind of, like, I mean, Super Smash Bros. Melee is its own OP, right? And it has its own opening, whatever. In fact, a lot of the games have their own sort of opening thing, but nothing really, there's nothing like the cinematic and the actual CG stuff of like Brawl or Melee. And there's something kind of like that here. I think that's sort of what Narmak's going for, but like, it's hard to be in that. It's hard to insert yourself in the space, and what can you add, right? That a lot of people haven't already tried, because like I feel like this sort of thing's probably been made before too. I can't point to specific examples, but like it's definitely echoing that thing of like, yeah, it's very much of like what Melee's opening is like, or what other people may have made in like the 2000s. You know what I mean? I feel like this sort of thing was fairly common. So I don't feel like it was hard to put yourself in carve a space for yourself in that way. I also believe, to my knowledge, it seems that he's just doing a Melee opening here. He's just focusing on the Melee cast, and that's a good choice actually, because like doing it's only 16 characters, whereas trying to do an ultimate one at the moment is very unfeasible. You'd have to, because he'd have to adapt all of those characters into his style, and to like find a place for all of them. So that'd be a even more work on his part. So I think the choice of using just Melee was really smart too. I just was appreciating a lot of the actual craft on display, and it didn't feel like the humor was getting in the way. His talent was always very undeniable to me. It was always just like the content, the meat, and the writing and stuff that I was just like, I'm not a big fan of this personally. And that was kept pretty to a minimal here, of course, because it's more of an anime OP. I always liked his SpongeBob one too, and although I will say that one felt a little more inspired. I would say that this one, there was some kind of derivative stuff, and there's just like, you know, it wasn't wowing me in the same way as I think some of his other stuff may have in the past. But still, I was respect the craft, and it's pretty cool. So BestGuyEver put out a very big Star Trek video that's pretty much just a top 11 list. I would go one step beyond about his favorite Star Trek Next Generation episodes, and I really enjoyed that video. But what was really interesting and different for him was this thing that he uploaded separately. I guess, I don't know, due to demand or whatever. This thing, Starfleet on the Street, where he's on the streets of like a beach of like California or something. I don't really know. And literally doing like an interviewing and like random people and talking about Star Trek and asking them random questions and stuff. And like you don't get any you obviously don't get any context of like first of all, it's like because it's like, it's one thing to do the all gas no brakes thing and just like interviewing people and like, what are you doing here and stuff. It's like very basic questions, and they can just let the individual go off. But Nate's very much driving this and asking a lot of Star Trek related questions, and to me it was like I think he preened. He's like, you know, asked before he started recording. Basically, it was like, "Oh, do you know Star Trek? Do you mind asking you some Star Trek questions and stuff?" And people were willing to do that sort of thing, or just play along with it in that way. And I thought it was very playful in that way. He had great banter with everybody. It was just really cool to see him do something different like this and kind of out of the box, and you know, putting himself out there in that way. I certainly wouldn't have the stones to do something like this kind of content. It's something I admire, and I think he got good results out of it. I think it's risky too to do this kind of content, because it's like you have no idea what you're gonna get. So I was just like really respected that he was able to, that he made something like this. I think it was really cool. it did, well, wasn't like blew my mind or anything like that. It was just like, wow, that's really great, and I'm happy to see him expanded in that way. Um, and it had that charm that he has. That's not very. I think early on he had a very over the top, like really intense, out like personality and like vibe as a content creator. I think that made him more like bigger and legendary, like kind of self-important. Um, but I think this one, I think he's like a lot more down to earth. I feel like I get a better vibe for that from this video too. Which I just enjoy. I think it's a really good dynamic of like having this like really high positive outlook and like this really great, best guy ever persona that he started with, but with more maturity and groundedness. It feels like he's, evolved, like he's grown as a content creator kind of deal, and he has more maturity about him and more realistic expectations for some of his stuff. Because like, I think one of his difficulties early on was that he was making insanely good stuff, but it would be so perfected that it would take a long time to make. So like I feel like that previous version of him would not make something like this. But I think that's just what makes it really interesting and exciting, and because he still has that passion and like really charismatic energy, but he's able to put it out there more, and to, and putting himself out there in general with this kind of format, which is great. I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting. It was good to see from him. I also just like the whole video in general, but I just wanted to specifically point this part out because it was especially interesting. I don't know if I would have like mentioned the whole video, like mentioned his Star Trek video, if it wasn't for this chunk that was especially interesting to me. No, again, I liked the full video. I watched the whole thing. It was great. I think this part was just really interesting for him as a creator, though. I just wanted to point out this kind of weird thing that's Funimation was suddenly dropping up full episodes of Ragnarok, the animation, on their channel. I think they put out 4 episodes, and then I saw a tweet that was sort of, I think Crunchyroll had made a call or something. I don't know if ANN reported it or Crunchyroll reported it or something, but like they were mentioning how Funimation is starting to try to do a couple upscales or remasters or something, and they don't advertise it as such like that in this video, in their upload of this first episode. And watching it, I couldn't necessarily tell you what they did. I'm not much of a video file, so I couldn't tell you what they necessarily did. It looked fine. It did look like a 2000s as good as you can get it type of thing. It doesn't look like they did anything particularly ugly to it or something, like the mess ups of whatever, or did some weird voodoo magic on it. Looked like a regular upload, I guess, and a lot of the comments were very like, oh, nostalgia type of thing, and I was feeling the same way because this is actually one of the first anime that I watched in full. Like I watched all the episodes of, because my library had all the episodes on one disc, like one, not disc, but like collection in one set basically. So that's interesting, but like I really appreciate it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Something that the Funimation's doing, I guess, and to point that way. But that wasn't the only full upload of something. So FemboyFilms, they have started to not just go into restoration, but full VHS capture of some various OVAs and movies and whatever stuff they can find. In particular, stuff that like hasn't been uploaded before. So this OVA that's like a Yakuza type of thing, and it's got like Great Teacher Onizuka themes with like the Yakuza main guy, kind of like this tougher dude becoming their substitute or high school teacher or whatever. It's not like there's subs to this thing. They didn't go that far, which is okay. But like they're really this has never been captured digitally, so this was not available online at all. So this was effectively what people could consider lost media, in our sense of the word, I suppose. But yeah, High School Jingy is the name of the OVA. And it was just really cool to see. They were also like, I really appreciate like always being able to read their descriptions and having the full context and them giving it to you, and then it doesn't have to be in the video itself. It's just like, here's the thing, and then we'll give you the context underneath. It's always great to read those. And then obviously the community that they're starting to build here is very technically savvy, and like they're able to talk. It's like, oh, how did you do this and that, and thank you for uploading in this way and whatnot. There's an interesting conversation happening under there in the comments with just like the effect that it has with haloing. So it has like this kind of a glow around all the characters and all the objects that the VHS naturally has, and they were like, yeah, we tried capturing this on multiple VHS machines, and they were all basically having that effect. And there is technology to remove that, but it was also removing a lot of detail. And especially since this is the first time this is being uploaded anywhere, they wanted to make sure that they didn't do that necessarily. They don't need to mess with it in that way. But yeah, they got it straight from the VHS, so the video and audio itself is as good as you can probably get. It's not amazing, but again, it's certainly better than whatever. And to be fair, I didn't watch the whole OVA. I watched probably like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and it's whatever. It's kind of like kind of horny, not really that funny, or I don't know. Didn't have any particular qualities that I was like, oh, I would go out of my way to watch this in particular. But again, the novelty here is that this had never been available, period. And I just think that's great, because I would want as much anime as possible to be available in some capacity, so it was great to see that, and it's cool that they're going in that additional direction on top of all the restoration stuff that they do, which is really interesting and is worth following their group and their channel for specifically. I did check out Noralities' video on Bee and Puppy Cat, Magical Girls for Millennials, and I wanted just to talk about more of her stuff, because I think it's interesting she's an interesting player in this, she's definitely seemed to have gotten steering away from being a controversial figure, and I think that I think I mentioned this talking about her stuff last time, is like I hope that goes, like, it just didn't seem right to me. She didn't seem the kind of person that would be leaning into that too much, and so I'm happy that she's mostly talking about stuff she likes, and I hadn't heard very much about Bee and Puppy Cat, so I was happy to hear an analysis of it. I would say the magical girl angle is a little overlooked. She starts the video talking about how, like, she loves the magical girl genre. It just doesn't seem that there's any. Where's the magical girl anime for me, for a young adult? Right? And it was a little weird to me, because it's like, are you saying that those things aren't for you, and you can't take something away from something like Ojamaja Doremi or Cardcaptor Sakura? It's like, just because that they're third graders or whatever age that they're at, that doesn't mean it can't be emotionally impactful, or like, it just felt weird, because a core component of it is like them being grown up, and there are some magical girl anime that are like, they're adults, but like, it's kind of not the same thing. I think a core component of it is them being adolescents and learning these things and learning about magic, and the idea of magic not being all it's cracked up to be type of thing. Like, it's a coming of, I think the coming of age section is part of it, right? And I think she's still advocating for Magical Girl to be coming of age. She just wanted something that was like a girl in her 20s, and she's getting fired from her job, or dealing with these more adult ideas, I guess. I guess that's fair. But to me, she ended up focusing a lot more on the slice of life aspects that didn't necessarily have to do with what made it a Magical Girl series. So I almost kind of forgot that it was about Magical Girl stuff. So that was like the hook for the video, but then the rest of it was just talking about Bee and Puppy Cat in more character-based terms and aesthetic terms. Her con section was kind of weird to me, because it just felt like scraping and like saying cons for the sake of saying it. It felt a lot like a Sarah Zed video, where she was talking about the Kickstarter, and it wasn't fulfilling its promises, and they were going to put it on Verve, and Canadians weren't going to be able to get Verve, and then it just felt a little shoehorned, personally. I don't know. I think if you wanted to talk about that, you can make it specifically about that, but I felt I got a lot more value out of listening to about the show itself, and I think her character analysis was really solid and engaging. I also really liked her talking about the aesthetics of the show. I thought that was awesome too. It was comfortable in that way, and I guess it's because, like, my whole thing is this: when anyone's talking negatively about something, it's hard for me. It's not something I'm into. But like so that felt a little shit. And also she had a complaint about the show itself, about like the writing and the use of some humor and stuff. And like, I know what she's talking about, the kind of the Adventure Time she calls it Adventure Time stoner humor. And I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good way of describing it. Kind of a little flippant off the cuff, a little too casual, um, weird, and I definitely feel that. But it was just, I felt like the section was there just so that it's not perfect. Look, it's not perfect. Like, I don't need to know that. Like, sure, you could. Who cares if it's not, or even if you talk nothing but praise about the show, I wouldn't. They were like, what about its flaws? Like, do we really need to know? It's like, isn't that interesting? There feels like there's this not anime YouTube, but there's like YouTube discourse where you have to talk about, like, if something's not perfect, you gotta talk about those things. Well, no, I don't have to actually. I don't have to talk about the flaws of Ojima Doremi in my video on that, which is taken down right now. I did counter it. I did do a counterclaim, but we'll see. I'm not. Yeah. I don't. Whatever. Like, just talk about it. It just felt like she had to for the sake of saying those things, and it's like, you didn't have to, in my opinion. No, but I was pretty comfy with it. I enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, she spoils the series and the end of it. Also, apparently there's a second season that leaked, and so it's like out, but it's not officially out. And it's like, well, what is that? And she's like, I'm not going to talk because I haven't seen it, and I don't want to watch it illegally type of thing. And so she's like, some of this analysis might be addressed in season 2 or something, which is already out. So to me, it was just like, that's a weird spot to put yourself in. I mean, personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable knowing that there's more to it. I feel like if it was a self-contained thing, like Over the Garden Wall or something like that, then it's like, yeah, I can talk about the whole thing. I feel no qualms or reservations about it in that regard. But if there's a second season and some people already have seen it, I feel like, I don't know. Especially, like, I hate to know if your comment section was like filled with spoilers or something about that. Yeah, and I like the message overall at the end of talking about the spoilers, which I'm not going to mention here. I think it's actually really different, and I wasn't expecting it, actually. But yeah, I feel like that's my overall. I enjoyed it, for sure. I did enjoy this Beastars Season 1 in 8 minutes thing from TeamFourStar. I didn't think the humor was too of them. Like, it didn't feel like obviously like very manipulatively marketable. Like, they had this catchphrase and they're going to suddenly put it on a shirt. Which is, I think they've done in the past. And it's very succinct. And I have not seen Beastars, but it really felt like you could follow the whole thing where it didn't feel as plot summary. It didn't feel like going through the motions very rigidly. It actually felt kind of natural in that way. But again, that's from somebody who hasn't seen the first season. So maybe it was a little more formulaic for someone who has seen it. I don't know. But they were going through all the plot beats very efficiently, succinctly. All I think all the quotes were pretty punchy. I was impressed with the voice acting. I don't know if they actually got the official voice actors for some of these. I feel like they did, or maybe they didn't, and then it's like it just is really impressive for how similar some of these, from what little I've heard of the dub for Beastars kind of thing. And also, I just want to admire the technical achievement here, because it was probably really difficult to adapt their abridging, of 2D animation into something that's 3D, and they can't move the lip flaps as consistently as they do in TeamFourStar. It had to actually be more generic, like Beastars, usually is. It's a little more, it's different. But I could tell there's some moments where they were really smart about, like, freezing it and then using certain pieces and then green screening a couple things to make some character animation show up in different places and stuff. But I think the technical aspect, it was pretty smooth, actually, and impressive in some places. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. I was just, like, pretty impressed. Yeah, I actually liked it. And I also, like, the comedy itself just wasn't that annoying at all. I didn't like bust a gut or anything like that. Like, I feel like their other work, they may have gotten me a lot more. But I appreciated it. It was pretty good. Another thing I appreciated was the new Otaku-Vs episode of Oda-chan, the real anime. This is real anime without a Japanese studio, and I know this is a different thumbnail than they had last time, because I just yeah, it's interesting. This is a continuation of the episode 4, which I loved, because it just had a really different feel to it, and it was because they had the Striving for Animation guys on it, and I don't know if they have the same guys on this one. I was looking through the credits, which I was really happy that they had like legit credits and not just like patrons like they have like the first couple of episodes. This one, like, I just really liked the feel to it, and they were really proud of it. You could tell that they were like really happy how much of an anime it felt like. The emotional drama here, like it's very uncharacteristic of Oda-chan as in the previous couple of episodes and what they were trying to building towards. And they had this kind of thing of like this dynamic of one of the characters kind of being a little more like straight-laced and having to work and being more mature, and envying Oda-chan for just like going for it and putting themselves out there, while Oda-chan is like really kind of overwhelmed by it and not sure if she can take much more of it, sort of deal. It's a lot. It is very exhausting, I can imagine, and I feel like that could have possibly been reflecting in their experience of like with Oda-chan and with Otaku-Vs, like doing this persona for that long, and on this sort of like really intense grind, and your fan base is really passionate about that. With how long these episodes take to come out, it's a real investment, and so it was just interesting to see that reflected in the episode itself, and it was a lot more somber and slower paced. It didn't like impress me in like the like holy shit kind of way, like I think the previous episodes might have, in a way that's subversive or surprising in some way. But like it was something that was just like interesting, and I don't know where it's going from here. I will say that it was definitely a lot different than the conversation that we had a long time, like over a year ago at this point. The plans have definitely changed a lot over the course of it. But I think it's because they scaled back a lot, and they decided to make something a little more mental, more like cerebral, I guess, which is a high compliment. Using a word like, this Oda-chan show is cerebral. It's not exactly this, but like it's not like this episode's cracking that many jokes in the same way the previous episodes were. It was a lot more thoughtful, and I guess thoughtful is probably a better descriptor than cerebral. It's not like this thing's really thought-provoking in the same way. It was more like it's less actiony or like showing things off, I guess. But that makes it really hard to sell and kind of undefinable for a YouTube video, and so I can tell it's like this is really hard to advertise. That's why the original thumbnail was like her abs or something, and now it's trying to like lean into the fact that it's very legit like an anime, and it feels very much like a substantial anime. But I think they got a lot more like humble and reverence for the medium that they're dipping their toe in, which I think is it's just great to see, I think, and expose their audience to that sort of thing. It'd be interesting to see if they have some sort of like public reflection about the whole thing once it's wrapped up. There's 6 episodes of this, so let me see where this goes at the end of the last episode, and seeing where they're going from here. It'd be really cool. I don't know why my voice is suddenly yeah. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. Yes. And now what I thought were the best videos of the week. And this first one from the Canipa Effect, dipping his toes into not anime, the animation of Rick and Morty. Just talking about the interesting dynamics on display of the differences with some of the shorts that they're doing that's more experimental. I was surprised that he didn't mention the Australian short. Not because he himself is like from Australia or something. No, but like it was sort of indicative of that same thing where Rick and Morty is so undefinable in art style, and like you can do it in all these different styles and stuff, and it works for that because of the multiverse thing. It has that flexibility to it, And it's interesting, like I think Canipa notes here that like it's not as reflected in the show itself, because the show itself, it's a Western production, so it has to be very firmly on model the whole time. And I really like that he illustrates this contradiction of choosing an art style that is supposed to make your job easier, in that using like puppet, flash, not really flash I guess, but like the current tools that they use, with like puppet animation, and it's not like a character design, like there's a character design and they're just like using a model. It's like using like what Campus says is like using 3D, like using CG basically, but for a 2D environment. But like it's supposed to make your job easier, and yet they use so much resources on all these different backgrounds, all these different designs for different creatures and aliens that they encounter. Like no two creatures are the same. And also that like the way that the West does storyboards versus Japan, where like Japan just kind of gives you the rough idea, and sometimes they're just stick figures or something, and they give you like the general gist. But like the storyboards for Rick and Morty, they're almost entirely animated already. Like you can probably just watch the storyboard and it's right there. Like you don't even have to imagine anything. And there's obviously pros to that. You get exactly what you wanted, but you're literally making the fucking thing twice, and it's literally 2 times the freaking work, or 3. Like it's literally doing the animation twice. It's crazy. And I don't remember what video. I think it was the next one I'm watching afterwards that was like, it was almost like complimenting it in that way, but I was seeing it from Canipa's perspective. It's like, this is so wasteful. Like this is wasteful work. I mean, I don't know if he's outright saying that in necessarily, but like that was how I was taking it for sure. It's like this. Why aren't we spending the resource like doing it over here? It was just really interesting. And of course his perspective on it from someone who doesn't study this area as much and is a little more foreign, and bringing that to his audience, I think was really valuable. So yeah, I enjoyed this video great deal, and it was awesome. I think this is the first time I'm talking about one of RebelTaxi's videos. I've been a subscriber for a long time, and you know, one of the few cartoon channels that I watch regularly. And of course he has Azuken right on the middle of the cover, so of course I'm going to watch it. But it was great, because the first thing... So the video is cartoons about making cartoons, and it's about different episodes of shows where they are talking about the making of cartoons and stuff. There's a little meta type of thing. And he covers a pretty wide gambit, and he talks about Shirobako, talks about Azuken, talks about Golden Boy, talks about Paranoia Agent, and even the episode of the Kirby anime that a lot of people like, and then that like reanimated thing. It was just really covered the whole thing. It was like really good. And obviously also had examples from Western animation that I had no idea about, like some of the Simpsons episodes that they've done a couple of these apparently, which was interesting. There's like that live action TV series that like had starred Jim Carrey as an animator in this studio and stuff. I had never heard of it. It was like, wow, that's interesting. A lot of different things, and the John K. This Ren and Stimpy episode was especially interesting, and I was really happy that he features the commentary, and how John doesn't take it very well. It was just really interesting. I loved this video. It was a really fun watch and quick. Like the thing with RebelTaxi is that he moves on like some things really nicely and has a great sense of humor throughout it. It's very succinct, moves quick, like going through a lot of examples in only 27 minutes, but doesn't feel like he's rushing it in any way. And yeah, it felt great. I think it's in general, like usually he doesn't talk about anime or anything, but like even divorced from that and having seen a lot of his videos, this is like one of my favorites he's done in a long time. And again, not like his other videos were bad or anything like that. It was just like, wow, that slapped. That actually, instead of like a lot of times I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. Yeah, that was nice. But this was like, wow, this is fantastic. I could watch hours of this. This particular, like him going through all these different examples and stuff. Yeah, it was fantastic. Hazel had another great video. Like, and I was just like, this video in particular, the unreleased anime that almost changed history, it is actually giving me like some Zaria or Pedantic Romantic vibes, but like way more humor. Like Zaria and Lachlan, they don't necessarily have as much humor per se, but just like the studiousness and um, the delivery of it, kind of like half flippant sort of deal, but still very sincere and caring a lot about it. Um, I just got good vibes from it. In that sense, it kind of reminded me of their content. But yeah, this was excellent. 51 minutes doesn't feel like, some of Hazel's videos have felt long in the past, like her recent the recent Vlad Love video was kind of big because it was bouncing through a lot of different topics. But this felt like very warranted of its length, and talking about this situation from early history, that she really went in depth and found articles and really got to the bottom of this like rumor, basically, talking about this particular OVA. And I thought, based on the thumbnail, that she was going to have more of a physical presence in the video, and I thought this was going to be kind of a different direction of her channel. Not necessarily. She does appear a good deal at the end, but she's done that as well in her... She had that one that was... There's a section where she, like... I think it was Elfen Lied, where it was more her present and stuff, and she, like, rented a studio or something, like, with a green screen. And she was doing the action button, type of thing with 2 different camera angles. I think that was the Elfen Lied one. I'm not sure. Anyway, no, but yeah, like, and it's really great that she's able to make stuff like really regularly. She's like really active right now, and enjoying a lot of great success. I think a lot of people are looking up to her and making their own content in that way, and she's growing really well as a content creator. Like, numbers wise, I'm not like a YouTube guy in that way, but I mean, doing a heck of a lot better than a lot of these other guys where, yeah, like, I'm just saying. But yeah, like, really great topics too, and really valuable stuff. This was really interesting. The main thing that I took away from this, that I was like, I need to talk to my boss about this, like, because he probably knows about this incident fairly well. I don't know how much information he's able to corroborate from this, but basically what this was that US Manga Corp, Central Park Media, which my boss has worked at, I don't know what years, but he's probably familiar with this situation, where they were going to release this ecchi thing that, like, it's ecchi, but it's not the most over the top thing that they could have. It's not Uruseki Doji or like some of the other, like, there are way worse than this title, basically, that Hazel really paints a good picture of, and of course a very thorough one of. But like, the whole thing was that, like, it was going to be packaged with like pink panties, which is a whole other it turns out it's this other thing. But the gist is, and that Hazel is like, she says that no one's really put this forward as a hypothesis before, that this whole basically what happened was that, like, there was an outrage, some Christian advocacy group that kind of got a hold of it, and it was reported on like Fox News or whatever, and it was starting to get this impression that anime is for deviants and kind of like more, it's all horny and whatever, that kind of perception that anime that community has been trying to advocate against and kind of fight. It's not all of this sort of thing. It basically has this whole stigma, and this might be kind of an epicenter of one of those like one of those reasons why they think this. And Hazel makes the argument pretty well backed, in my opinion, that this was completely manufactured by Central Park Media, or by like the people who are trying to sell this. They were like, if we get negative attention and we make it this controversy, that is good publicity, because any publicity is good publicity, is the idea. And while it might be good publicity for them, for the people selling it, it might not be good publicity for the anime community as a whole, or the convention that they are doing this at, which was the first AnimeCon 91, which would become Anime Expo, I believe, I'm pretty sure, as well as the people who were actually licensing it out to them, which was Sony. And apparently it was probably Sony that pulled they never released it, so it was unreleased, and so the subs haven't showed up Like apparently it was subbed by them, but those never got released, and it never got an official release in the United States. Like it was supposed to. It had a very. It was a rush job, and like Hazel has this whole timeline, and it's a rush job. It's a rush job, and so they're like, okay, in order to get this out there, let's contact this Christian advocacy group personally and tell them that we have this and kind of taunt them with it is kind of the implication here, as a way to sell this thing, which yeah, that's kind of crazy. Again, I think it's corroborated fairly well, at least it's convincing in my opinion. I obviously don't know if that's what happened. There's never been any official statement from these guys regarding that, or whether that's true or not. But based on the surrounding evidence and how much Hazel went into this and looking up all this stuff, it seems like it was rushed, and that there's an implication that in order to get more out of it. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not trying, if that's wrong, then like, cool. I would like to hear the real story behind it, because this is really interesting. And, yeah, I think that'd be really interesting. I don't know, but this was really informative and entertaining in that way. Well researched, in my opinion. At least it seemed that way. Also, just like in good faith, of course. It's definitely more in good faith, and I think it has a lot more balanced and careful. They're not trying to push an agenda in one way or the other. It's I think some people that. Like, this could very much be used as fuel against this old guard and against some of these like licensors and things like that. I feel like it could, but that's definitely not what Hazel's tone is, or what she's pushing in the same way. It's just like very is what it is type of thing. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It was really interesting, and it'd probably be my favorite video. I think. In a personal interest way, I think it'd be my favorite, but I just want to give a lot of good credit to Lowart's finale of his gigantic Full Metal Alchemist comparison series that he's been doing for 5 years. I think it was, 27. Well, yeah, let me see. Not 5 years. I forget, he had a gravestone at the end of this video. Basically, this video is an hour long, comparing Edward Elric's characterization between FMA03 and then Brotherhood, which is very similar to the manga, basically. And I thought it was excellent. I'm not as much of a Fullmetal Alchemist fan, and so I wasn't watching a lot of his other videos, and seeing this as an hour long, I was like, kind of don't know if I want to or not. I wasn't sure if I could if it was going to be boring or something, but I think he does a fantastic job. It reminded me a lot of my Doremi video in terms of the character analysis, I think. Now he's been making Full Metal Alchemist. His first one, where is it? I guess technically his first one was 3 years ago with the live action thing, but his first comparison video is at least of 2 years ago. Which, huge. And I'm happy he finally he did the thing that I think Go Jesus had been wanting to do for a long time, and just really fulfilled it, basically. Really cranked it out in these past couple of weeks, actually, now that I'm looking at it. He really went into finished a lot of the loose ends, basically, and various things. But this was really the capstone. I think the longest video in the series I guess I was going to say it didn't feel like an hour, but it didn't feel its length in the same way. I was like, oh, it didn't feel like a slog in that way. And I just really liked how methodical it was, going from basically comparing the two and dividing it into chunks of the story, and really letting you pacing it out. And I think you can tell it's a culmination of his constant comparing and very balanced takes between the two of them, feeling very even-handed, and it didn't feel like he was in favor of O3 or Brotherhood, and it just felt very balanced in that way, and he was understanding the differences and what they're each trying to do in their own way, and I love that balance. I love that kind of analysis. that feels very I don't want to say unbiased, but like, it was only one time where Lowart explicitly says, I had my problems with this, when he was talking about Conqueror of Shambhala. That's the only time he let that slip through. The rest of it just felt like very pure analysis. Didn't feel like his feelings weren't getting in the way, and it doesn't have anything to do with personal enjoyment or anything like that. It just felt like a good culmination of his efforts, and also just as a content creator, I just think he did a really good job keeping your attention. Not necessarily with like humor or anything like that. There was like maybe this one joke about Wikipedia and stuff that felt like a levity thing, but the rest of it was very focused on textual analysis. Like, not boring either. I can't tell you what was not, like, what he did to make this not boring for me, because I feel like a lot of other people would have just made this super freaking boring. I don't know. I think it was just like how much detail he was putting in and explaining each of these scenes and the importance of each of them. And every time he was bringing something up, it felt very purposeful. Even if it wasn't explicitly about Edward Elric, it was definitely about the series as a whole. But the core focus is kind of Ed's journey, and it was really painting a picture of like how bleak O3 is in comparison. Like Brotherhood, it really steers into this. He's a hero. He's a shonen protagonist type of thing. At least this is not Lowart's words. This is my words. He was very much like everyone looks up to this character type of thing, versus like, oh, this guy can't do anything right. Like with FMAO3, he's trying his best, but his beliefs are constantly being challenged, and he's dealing with a lot of pain and like tough situations and moral quandaries, and it just makes it for a much more interest. And I have a little bias towards O3, only because everyone else loves Brotherhood, and so I kind of like rooting for the underdog in a way. But like I also have my like small qualms with Brotherhood. Like I would prefer the origin of the homunculus, like where and what the result is, not to try to spoil it, basically, like the connection with homunculus and the other thing, over Brotherhood and where they come from. I've always preferred that in O3, but I understand Brotherhood has much more going into its production, and it's a more fully fledged story, I guess. I was very agnostic of choosing which one or the other, but it was really great having it felt very, oh, here's the difference, instead of an objective, oh, it covers this part of the manga and then it deviates. Instead of that kind of like the difference in those two that everyone kind of boils it down to, there's a much more thematic difference with these two that like, but it was great is that they actually have a very similar ending, which Lowart really praises O3 for managing to do, despite not having the rest of the source material. It actually managed to land in a somewhat similar place, but it just has a much more dour way of going about it, and a much more dour direction, which I'm interested if he knows about Sho Aikawa and the fact that he wrote O3 and was like I think he's the lead show writer on that, and he's probably the reason why it went that direction. And Sho Aikawa has other works that I would be interested in seeing what his thoughts are on something like Neo Ranga or something. I had not seen Neo Ranga yet, but like something like that, where it's like like Sho Aikawa seems to be a very distinct writer, similar to like the way we talk about Mario Okada or what's his name, Chiaki Konaka, the Digimon Tamers Serial Experiments Lane guy, the right wing. The whole thing, there's a controversy about him, but anyway, Sho Aikawa is kind of in that same vein, where his works, if he's attached to it and he's writing something, it's like, oh, that's something interesting and to pay attention to. If anything, for the fact that it'll be challenging and different. So I think that's something I would be interested in seeing if he knew about that. That Sho Aikawa is this kind of actually fairly well-known name. But I like that he talks purely about, he doesn't single out a creator in that way. That was probably a conscious choice. Like, he's not talking about the particular director or the author of the manga or something like that. He's just doing like, O3 does this, Brotherhood does this. Yeah, Brother Mangahood, I think is what he calls it. Mangahood is what he calls this Brotherhood. Yeah, but I mean, it was enjoyable for sure. And congratulations on finishing the whole thing and being able to finally move on to something else. You'd been making FMA stuff for a long time. And again, I was never a big fan of FMA in the same way, so I never had the incentive to watch a lot of them. But I always respected you for keeping on with it, and this was excellent analysis. I thought a good culmination of your efforts. So I think if you know, I don't know about watching the entire series myself, but like any of you who are interested, I think, but like not sure about the investment of the whole thing, this is a really good. I think he says at the beginning like each one is kind of made to be a standalone thing, which is smart and good idea. But you can tell that this is in the same vein, and it's the culmination of his efforts and getting better as a writer. I'm repeating myself. Yeah, that was great. That'll do it for this installment of AniTube Digest. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to have another stream, hopefully on Friday, going through the rest of more of the anime encyclopedia, and I have a main channel video hopefully dropping later this week. It was going to be on Sunday/Monday, but I got too busy with other things. But I'm halfway through making it, but I hope you look forward to that too. Anyway, have a good week. Yo, peace.